You're watching Phantom Astronaut's Night Terrors, where history's shadows come alive, and the stories of the past whisper through the present. Tonight, we're journeying to colonial Yorktown, a place steeped in history, tragedy, and ghostly tales that refuse to stay buried. From the Battle of Yorktown to lingering spirits in the streets, this story brings to life the haunting echoes of America's colonial past. If you love exploring the supernatural and the unknown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help our channel grow. Check the links in the description for more ways to support us. Now let's step into the eerie streets of Yorktown. Yorktown has always had a strange weight to it. I'm not just talking about the heavy, humid Virginia air that clings to your skin or the dense silence that falls over the town after sunset. No, this weight is different. It presses against you, like a presence watching from just beyond the veil. If you've ever been there, you'll know what I mean. Walk the streets at dusk, and you'll feel it. The way the shadows stretch just a little too far. The way the breeze carries whispers that don't belong. They say Yorktown's ghosts are restless, and after hearing this story, you might believe it. Our tale begins at the Nelson House, a grand brick mansion built in the early 1700s by Thomas Nelson Sr., a wealthy merchant and planter. The house played a key role during the Revolutionary War, serving as a headquarters and a symbol of defiance against British rule. But war leaves scars, and not all of them are visible. The first ghost was said to appear during the siege of Yorktown in 1781. Legend has it that the British used the Nelson House as a command post, and when General George Washington ordered artillery to fire on the house, its owner, Thomas Nelson Jr., reportedly encouraged the bombardment, even pointing out the exact window where British officers were stationed. Years later, visitors began reporting strange occurrences, footsteps echoing through empty halls, doors opening and closing on their own, and the unmistakable scent of gunpowder lingering in the air. Some claimed to see a man in a powdered wig standing at the upstairs window, his face pale and his expression somber. Was it Thomas Nelson Jr., still watching over his beloved home? Or was it one of the British officers who met their end within those walls? The battlefield itself is said to be the most haunted place in Yorktown. The siege of Yorktown was brutal, a violent clash that ended with the British surrender and secured America's independence. But war never truly ends for the dead. I remember the first time I walked the battlefield at night. The air was so still, it felt like even the insects were holding their breath. The moon cast long shadows across the open field, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. That's when I saw them. Faint shapes moving through the mist, their forms flickering like dying flames. Soldiers, their uniforms tattered, their faces blurred as though time itself had worn them down. They didn't acknowledge me, didn't even seem to notice I was there. They just marched, their heads bowed, their shoulders slumped, as if the weight of their deaths still clung to them. Locals call them the Shadow Soldiers. They say these ghosts are trapped, endlessly reliving their final moments on the battlefield. Some hear the faint sound of drums in the distance, others the sharp crack of muskets. But the most unsettling sound is the silence that follows. A silence so profound, it seems to swallow everything around it. Then, there's the story of the girl in the window. It's said that during the Revolutionary War, a young woman named Anne had been left behind in Yorktown while her fiancé went off to fight. Every day, she would sit by the window of her family's house, staring out at the road, waiting for him to return. But he never did. He died on the battlefield, and when the news finally reached Anne, she was inconsolable. The story goes that she refused to leave her vigil by the window, even as her health deteriorated. She died there, sitting in her chair, her eyes fixed on the road. Today, visitors to Yorktown often report seeing her. She's described as a pale figure in a white dress, sitting by the window of an old house. She doesn't move, doesn't speak. She just stares, her gaze filled with a sadness so deep, it's almost unbearable. One visitor claimed to have approached the house late one night, curious about the story. As he drew closer, he saw her more clearly, a young woman with hollow eyes and a face that seemed almost too perfect, like a porcelain doll. But when he stepped onto the porch, she turned her head ever so slightly to look at him, and he ran. He swears he heard her whisper, "Have you seen him?" as he fled. Not far from the battlefield stands a gnarled old tree, its twisted branches reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. They call it the execution tree, and for good reason. During the colonial era, it was used to hang deserters, spies, and anyone who crossed the wrong people. The tree has a presence, a weight that makes your skin crawl. People who visit it often report feeling sick, their stomachs churning as if the air itself is poisoned. Some say they hear voices, low, murmured conversations that grow louder as they approach. And then there are the figures. One woman, a local historian, told me about her experience. She'd been researching the execution tree for a book and decided to visit it at sunset. As she stood beneath its gnarled branches, she saw a man hanging from the rope, a shadowy figure that swayed gently in the breeze. She blinked, and he was gone, but the rope remained, swinging slowly as though someone had just been cut down. She left Yorktown that night and never returned. Why is Yorktown so haunted? Some say it's the sheer weight of history, the bloodshed, the sorrow, the untold stories that linger like ghosts themselves. Others believe the land itself is cursed, marked by the violence of war and the pain of those who suffered. Skeptics dismiss the tales as the imagination, the result of suggestive stories and the eerie atmosphere of an old colonial town. But if you've ever stood in Yorktown after dark, you'll know there's something more. You'll feel it in your bones, in the way the air grows heavy and the shadows seem to reach for you. Thank you for joining me on this chilling journey through the haunted streets of colonial Yorktown. If tonight's episode of Phantom Astronaut's Night Terrors kept you on edge, remember to like, share, and subscribe to help the channel grow. Don't forget to check the links in the description for more ways to support us. This has been Phantom Astronaut's Nocturnal Tales. I'll see you out there.